offered me free chicken quesadillas for life if I came back and played.
Players are usually broke, and they're usually always hungry.
Yeah, I think he's probably the best player in the country right now with the way he's playing and what he's doing out on the field week in and week out.
The Big Bets on Campus podcast.
All right, here we go.
Welcome, everyone, to the Week 5 edition of Johnny's Intangibles. I'm Collin Wilson. Joining me today and every week is Johnny Manziel to talk about the latest things happening inside of college football. And Johnny, we're going to roll right into it. Let's figure out who the MVP of the week is. There's a whole list of candidates here. We need to call out some of the best players in college football. I wanted to call out, before I give you the list to pick from, I really want to give some love to an offensive lineman. Brian Parker is the #1 rated offensive lineman for Duke. He hasn't allowed a sack. He hasn't allowed a pressure. He hasn't allowed a quarterback hit on Malik Murphy at Duke. So I just want to get some offensive lineman love because quarterbacks love them. As far as the list this week, Cam Ward doing his best Heisman. Khalil Mullings owning that game against USC. Blake Horvath for Navy doing his best Keenan Reynolds impression. Is there a player out there that you think should be the MVP of the week?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm always a sucker for the dual threat guy. I'm going to give it to Navy this week and Blake Horvath. 12 carries, 211 yards, 4 touchdowns. He added another 192 and 2 touchdowns through the air. So 6 touchdowns this week for Blake Horvath against a Memphis team who a lot of people at the beginning of the year thought maybe can sneak into the college football playoff. That's a big time performance and a big time game for them and a big win. Anytime you see a guy out there rushing 192 or 211 yards, 4 touchdowns, and adding another couple hundred yards through the air and a couple scores, that jumps off the page to me. And sometimes you got to go and give it to the little school. We've been giving, Cam Ward a lot of hype, a lot of love throughout the season. So we got to go with the Service Academy this week.
Absolutely. You have to pay attention to service academies. When they do get players like Keenan Reynolds who played at the same time as you, it completely changes the offense, and you really have to diagnose, can you tackle in space? And now Horvath has done that. So Navy's going to be dangerous here down the stretch. We'll put in a little note here on James Madison, their quarterback, Alonzo Barnett. They went on to score 70 against North Carolina's defense. Johnny, it's pretty hard to score 70 in a game, right?
It's hard to score 70 in a game. A lot of things have to go right, and you really have to be clicking. I'm watching that game this week and seeing a halftime score. It looked like a basketball score. Don't know what happened with UNC this week, but James Madison came in there and did their thing. Really just ran over them. You're doing whatever you want, scoring at will if you're putting up a 7 and a 0 on the scoreboard.
Well, let's talk about a game that went under the total, kind of surprisingly went under the total, but the favorite did cover on the road, and that was Tennessee and Josh Heupel returning back to Norman. They beat the Sooners by 10, covering that spread of 7. The critical play in this game, the one that gave them the lead and they were never in trouble from covering standpoint from then on out, was Dante Thornton's touchdown. Now, he lined up as a right wide receiver. It looks more like he was running more of a post spot than a slant. He cut in. It was just a fantastic throw there by Nico. When you break this down, is this Oklahoma corner Connie Walker's fault? Is this the timing offense of Josh Heupel? Is this just perfection by Nico? Tell me about this play here and why it was so critical to the game.
I think it's just a little bit of a defensive error on Oklahoma, but also, the corners trying not to let him get outside, run a fade, do anything like that. So, it's really just a 12 to 15 yard, really speed cut in. It's not really a slant. It's not really a post. But I think the one thing that jumps off the screen is Nico here just being really, really good with his feet. He's really in rhythm. He takes a couple, just drops little hitches back and then just lets this ball fly out in space. And because of the way the route is, speed cut going in, the corner, he doesn't really have a chance to catch up to this. And I think it's just, a matter of skill when it comes to this ball being in the right spot and this receiver just taking off and absolutely housing it. You can see in the clip a little bit, the backers get a little bit of suck up. They don't, really get and drop depth into that window of where he's trying to throw that ball. And it really is just a one-on-one route, puts it right on the money, and he's off to the house. And this was such a big play, obviously, in this game for Tennessee, to kind of secure things.
Would you agree that the handicap on Tennessee really should start? Like, if you're going to stop this offense, because we have Georgia, we have a lot of other teams coming up. Does it really start with the corner play, being able to put a stiff arm on Thornton and stop this? Is that really a critical aspect of stopping this Tennessee offense?
I mean, in this play in particular, you do have to get a little bit of hands-on and try and not let him just get such a free run, through the defense. I think coming up, I think the main thing is going to be to rattle Nico a little bit, to put pressure on him for the teams that are coming up, and really try and make him uncomfortable. Like this clip, he couldn't be more comfortable sitting here, sees the whole field, sees such a great window. So I think it's, coming up, the recipe to stop them is to put more pressure on him and really clog up some of those throwing lanes, make it a little more difficult on him.
Well, let's go ahead and stick with Nico here. Nico Iamaleava is all the way up on the Heisman leaderboard, but the guy that's at the very top of everybody's list right now is Cam Ward. He's definitely in the top three. The other player in there, seeping into everybody that I've seen, is Travis Hunter. So let's start with the two quarterbacks real quick with Nico and Cam. Nico, so far to me, he has 6 big-time throws and 5 turnover-worthy plays. Not really the same ratio that you can see from PFF grading out of Cam Ward, who has 11 big-time throws and only 2 turnover-worthy plays. Out of these two quarterbacks, Johnny, which one do you think should have the lead for the Heisman Trophy?
I think Cam Ward should probably have the lead for the Heisman here with how he's played so far, how that Miami offense has looked as a whole. You can tell the difference in these two guys just by the amount of experience that Cam Ward has as playing in the quarterback position as many years as he has. Things look really, really slow to him out there. These big plays that are there whenever he needs to go make them, he's making them look really effortless. And I think right now he's very much in the driver's seat of what we've seen through an early, 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, both you and I are Heisman voters. So I think when it comes to Travis Hunter, it's really a thing where can you vote a defensive player? We've had some really good defensive players in the past. You think of Nanama Suh just absolutely taking over games for Nebraska. But Travis Hunter plays both sides of the ball, and he was pivotal in creating that forced fumble that led to the Shedeur Sanders game-winning score against Baylor. Hunter's counting stats right now, he's got 472 receiving yards, 5 TDs, 14 tackles on defense, an INT, and a PBU. So he's really doing it on both sides of the ball and playing well over 100 snaps. But as Heisman voters, Johnny, are you think that he can make it into New York? And do you think he can generate enough votes on a team that looks like they're going to finish 5 or 6 wins? Can he generate enough votes to actually win this award?
Yeah, I think he's probably the best player in the country right now with the way he's playing and what he's doing out on the field week in and week out. So, as a Heisman voter, you are looking for those guys who are the most outstanding players, and it doesn't really matter where they are, what their team is. I think they'll have enough views, they'll have enough buzz. He'll be playing well enough throughout the season that if his numbers are there and he continues to make the impact that he's making week in, week out, I would expect to see him in New York in December.
Yeah, Colorado's got to stay healthy, and they've got to stay interested as we get down the stretch here. Let's talk about a game that's going to be highly interesting this weekend. It is Alabama, Georgia this week, coming down to Tuscaloosa. As of this recording, we don't know if this hurricane is going to formulate and go over the state of Alabama, but the game itself is going to be on fire, just like back in 2012 when Texas came in to face #1 Alabama. It was an electric atmosphere. You led Kevin Sumlin's offense into hostile territory. You took over the game and got a big 27 lead to start. Take us through what happens from a Monday to a Saturday as an athlete, because we never know as handicappers if a team is going to come out sluggish or if a team is going to come out with just explosive fireworks all over the place. Being the visiting team in a hostile territory, I think it really surprised everybody. What is the perfect week for a player getting ready for a massive game during the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you have your school, you have your things throughout the week. I think the biggest thing that sets you apart in these big games is your scheme and is your plan going into these games. I remember going into this Alabama game and, we had plays from the very first Monday that we're going through, and it's really attention to detail in your walkthrough and to these plays that, just based on scheme and what you've seen on film are going to come up to be huge, pivotal moments in the game. For example, our game against Alabama that year, we knew when we got into hurry up offense after watching on a Monday, they were probably going to go man coverage. And we worked on this little fake option play that turned into a drop back pass with 2 receivers in the slot on the left side. And this was a play that we had to hit. And in the game, you come out and you execute it and you hit it for a 50-yard gain and one that sets you up to get one of those scores early. So I think, the biggest thing is, you have no fear when you're going into these big games, at least for us going in being a big underdog. But our scheme, our plan, the way we had been that entire year was to come out and start fast. And you can only do that if you're executing what you have in front of you.
Would there be expectation that maybe Georgia kind of replicates a little bit of that tempo? They have the ability to go tempo. They don't usually do, but sometimes their offense does. Would you expect Carson Beck to come out and probably let it go down the seams, down the sideline to start?
Yeah, I think they are going to have to be aggressive this week. The last time we saw them play, they're holding on for dear life. They didn't look great. Now they're facing an opponent that, is a top 4 team in the country and has a lot of talent scattered throughout this defense. So I think for them, they're going to have to come out early, be able to run the ball, and then when they have their opportunities to stretch it down the field, he really needs to make those big throws to push them really down the field. They need to move the ball a little more vertically down the field than they have in the last couple of weeks. And I think Carson Beck is the guy who holds the key to all that.
Yeah, we'll see if they have a different offensive game plan they had against Kentucky. But this game is heavily going to affect everybody's top 10. And at Action Network, we keep a betting power ranking that actually gives us a determination on who should be a favorite and how much should they be a favorite by. For us, our top 10 goes with Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, and Penn State in the top 5. After that, Oregon, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Miami, and then USC slips in at number 10. When you look at this list of 10 teams, which one of these teams is not making the college football? Now, I told you you're going to have to be negative on somebody at some point. Which one of these 10 teams is not making the college football playoff?
If I had to go off this list and see somebody who's probably not going to make the list, I would probably say Oregon.
Yeah, that's everybody's Big Ten favorite is now kind of falling by the wayside.
They just haven't looked as good offensively. Now, there's a lot of time and a lot of room to improve from that, but right now they just haven't really impressed so far throughout the season.
Yeah, and Dylan Gabriel was the one that took a massive Heisman hit from 14-1 down to 7-1 before the season started. Now you can get that number right back. There's just not a lot of believers in that team right now. And frankly, I think USC can completely compete with them. And from a power rating perspective, it's going to be tough sailing for the Ducks. I'm actually going to leave it on Tennessee. I know that they look good against Oklahoma, but there are some big defenses, and there's only so many teams from the SEC that can get in. And if you like Ole Miss better than Tennessee, then it's going to be tough for Tennessee to get in. We had a coach ejected this weekend, Johnny. It was Sonny Dykes was ejected to start the second half. Now, the story that he told in the post-game press conference was that his first unsportsmanlike was completely called for. Like, he deserved it. He was a little bit loose with the lips, and he got called for that flag. Turns out, very first kickoff of the second half comes out. He says something again to a different referee, and he gets ejected. Has there ever been any ejections in your professional or your amateur, any kind of playing career on any sport whatsoever, where a head coach is just removed from the game completely?
Oh, maybe in high school I had a coach get ejected one time for chirping at a ref a little bit, but this is definitely something you don't see a lot in college football. Sonny Dykes has been around the game for a long time, so he definitely, like you said, got his money's worth for the first one, and he definitely went back and got his money's worth again for the second one. So something we don't see a lot in college football, but interesting to say the least.
Well, if anyone doesn't know, Sonny Dykes, former coach of SMU, has whispered to me before that game means more to him than it does anybody else in the Metroplex. So it looks like he got a little emotionally involved in that game. Now, one coach who got me a little emotionally involved this week was Charles Huff at Marshall. He offered all you can eat Tudor's biscuits to the entire Ohio State team if they wanted to transfer down and play for Marshall, which got me thinking, having an all you can eat deal is a pretty big deal to college players. I mean, college players are usually broke and they're usually always hungry. So offering Tudor's biscuit was a pretty good plan to try to get some of those defections through the transfer portal. Johnny, you were the godfather of the NFL. You were the one that started all of this. And, there's a story out there that your dad had secured like a $3 million deal, to stay at Texas A&M. Is there anything odd, off the charts that you were ever offered at your time while you're at Texas A&M?
Yeah, I think for me, whenever I was deciding to was I going to stay another year in college? Was I going to go back or go to the NFL? My favorite food spot in College Station, Jose's Mexican Food in Bryan, offered me free chicken quesadillas for life if I came back and played another year for the Aggies. And I remember I still have the letter to this day. And I remember going back home and telling my sister and my mom about it. And it was definitely something that was lingering in my head as I was deciding to put those papers into the NFL draft. When you have a place that you've been there for a long time and you're used to going to, and a place that kind of feels like home, for me, it definitely perked my ears up a little bit.
And chicken quesadillas is the meal, right? That's the one that got you roped in.
Yeah, it was the chicken quesadillas, and their salsa was the best in town. So I had a great relationship with them there, and I thought it was, obviously really nice of them to do that. I still, try to go every single time I get back to a game at Kyle Field.
Well, Mike Elko, if you're listening, we need you to go on a Charles Huff type rant and start offering free food, free at Johnny's favorite Mexican spot. All right, Johnny, thanks for joining me. That's going to do it for this week's of Johnny's Tangibles. We'll be back same time, same place next week to recap week 5 of college football.